Hello, everyone. This is Alexia. So excited to see so many people joining, seeing so many states represented. Got New York, we got Illinois, got Georgia, Florida. I think I see a Texas, a Massachusetts. So great to see so many folks from around the country. Thank you all for joining. All right. We are going to go ahead and get started, but folks might continue to trickle in. Oh, South Carolina. Thank you, Dory. I did not see you. One more state. I always get excited. Uh, but hello, everyone. This is Alexia. I am the Director of Accessible Democracy at AAPD, and this is our July Rev Up call. As you all know, Rev Up stands for Register, Educate, Vote, Use Your Power. Before we get into our call today, I'm going to do a quick visual description of myself and go over some of our access features. So I am a young white woman with chin-length wavy blonde hair. I have clear glasses, I'm wearing a brown shirt, and my background is blurred. Next slide, please, April. All right, today we have a couple of access features. We have cart captioning, which you can view by clicking the CC button on your bottom toolbar, or if it's better for you to view the captions in another window so you can make the text larger, we encourage you to open the stream text link, which our tech support will put in the chat. Also, a pro tip for today's call, since we'll have a couple of panelists, having that stream text up might help you follow along the panel questions. So pro tip, click on that link from the chat. Our ASL interpreters today are Amy and Shantae. We will have them spotlit for everyone. If you can't see them, please message AAPD tech support or just send a message in the chat. And since we have a lot of different speakers today, we recommend clicking the top right button and clicking multi-speaker view, and that will help you see everyone who's speaking and interpreting. So just a reminder, our ASL interpreters are providing English to American Sign Language, and they will also voice interpret from American Sign Language to English for any ASL users. So if you see Amy or Shantae speaking, remember that it is an ASL user's communication, and we'll also spotlight them so you can make sure you know who is speaking. For the chat today, we'll try to keep that more to a minimum unless you need access support or need to use it to communicate. The chat can become distracting for screen reader users, so we'll just try to keep it from getting too chaotic. But if you have any questions or access needs, definitely do message us. But otherwise, feel free to use the raise hand feature, wave at us from your camera, and come off mute and communicate that way. All right. So we will also use breakout rooms today, which we'll go over in the second half of the call, but access will be provided there too. All right, next slide, please. So I am so excited to kick off our call today by introducing you all to Aubriana Wilson, who is AAPD's new State Voting Coalitions Coordinator. This is her first official National Rev Up call in this role, so we're super excited. I am going to continue supporting the Rev Up network, and Aubriana will be joining me in this work to provide even more direct support to our coalitions. So we're really excited to grow our capacity and get to connect directly with all of you. So I'll pass it over to Aubriana to introduce herself and get us into our agenda.
Thank you so much, Alexia. This is Aubriana, and thank you so much for the warm welcome, everyone. My pronouns are she, her, and for a brief visual description, I'm a young mixed race white and Japanese woman with long brown hair and brown glasses, and I'm currently wearing a cozy sweater and I have a virtual green background behind me. A little bit of an introduction. I am a disabled advocate that's currently based in Los Angeles, California. And before joining AAPD and Alexia's team, I've worked with other disability nonprofits to support disability inclusion and community building and political engagement. I have spent a background in civic engagement, political organizing, and disability justice, and I'm really excited to be continuing cross movement and intersectional advocacy with you all. I really admire your work around empowering the disability vote and building towards accessible elections, and I'm super excited to continue to learn from you and support all that you do. So, in my day to day, this might look like supporting the needs of the coalitions with facilitating communications, managing logistics, connecting you, and supporting you with resources and training and education. And I'm really excited to continuing to build relationships and support your work. So after this call, I'll continue to reach out to your coalition leads, and please feel free to reach out to Alexia and I at revup@aapd.com. And I will put that email in the chat now. Thank you so much. So we'd like to open it up for any questions or clarifications if folks want, but we just want to recognize that this growth is something really new and exciting, and we're excited to navigate this transition together. And we're super grateful to be doing this work with you all. I see Opal has a question. Go for it.
Good afternoon. I'm Opal Gordon. I'm from New York City. I'm a deaf advocate and I work in the deaf community. I've been very active in encouraging deaf and hard of hearing people to vote for deaf access, particularly about ASL interpreter. That's my major concern. So we're encouraging them to vote and then also to write letters that they send to their legislators, encouraging and emphasizing the need for access to interpreters in a variety of places, including hospitals and the court. So I've been very active in helping deaf and hard of hearing people register to vote. It's work I've done for a long time. So I want to thank you for allowing me to join you. I'm excited to work with everybody and learn from you. Think that there's much more of a dire need politically for us to get focused on meeting the needs of our diverse communities. Many people think I'm Hispanic. I'm actually Black and half Dutch. I'm completely deaf. And I want to thank you again for inviting me. Thank you.
This is Aubriana. Thank you so much, Opal. It's great for you to be here and to be joining our community, and we're excited to continue this conversation with you today. Next slide, please. So as for our agenda today, we'll be going over a couple of national updates at the top of the call, and then we'll be turning it over to our incredible panel of organizers and youth leaders. So today's national call is focusing on youth engagement and organizing, and our panelists will be sharing firsthand experiences mobilizing young people with disabilities around voting rights and civic engagement. We'll also have space for a Q&A, and we encourage you to ask questions or share reflections throughout the session as it comes up for you. After the panel, we'll take some time to explore strategies together, looking at how we can increase access to participation, empower youth voters with disabilities, and strengthen youth engagement across our REV UP coalitions. Then we'll spend some time in breakout rooms doing smaller group discussions before coming back to the main room to close out. To begin updates, I'm thrilled to welcome Gabi Reyes Acosta, our program manager at AAPD, who's going to share about an upcoming opportunity for you to get involved in supporting young people with disabilities in your communities. So I'll turn it over to Gabi. Next slide.
Hi, this is Gabi. Thank you so much, Aubriana and Alexia, and all of you for letting me join your space for a quick visual description. I am a young-ish, brown-skinned person with chin-length, wavy brown hair and bangs. I'm wearing green glasses and a black top, and I'm sitting in my home office, which has blue walls. So thank you again for letting me join. I'm just going to take a little bit of your time to talk to you about Disability Mentoring Day. So I am a programs manager here at AAPD. Disability Mentoring Day, or DMD, is one of the many programs that I support, and I'm lucky to have learned about and be able to work on. DMD is a nationwide effort to engage young people and students with disabilities to learn more about career opportunities, about what their professional journeys can look like, and to also feel affirmed and create long-lasting or even just short-term but deeply impactful relationships with adult mentors. BMD is an event that happens throughout the country at many different locations. It can happen at centers for independent living. It can happen at universities. It can happen at workplaces. DMD is really a program that is up to the creativity of the event planner. And so we at AAPD provide programmatic support for those who are interested in planning a Disability Mentoring Day event. Disability Mentoring Day typically happens in the or the third Wednesday, of October to coincide with National Disability Employment Awareness Month, but it can really happen at any time of the year, depending upon an event planner's schedule, capacity, and funding. And so it allows folks to connect employers who are really interested and invested in diversity, in investing in having more, staff and future employees who are disabled, and who are invested in working and mentoring with young people. And so we are really excited to have more supports for folks who want to run a DMD event this year. So if you are interested in planning an event, learning more about it, you can set up a time to meet with me, or you can come to one of our orientations. We have an orientation coming up on August 19th. It is no commitment. You can come, see if it's a good fit, or you can set up a time to talk to me and learn more about the event and its details, what it entails to run it. And so I will drop those links, or we'll drop those links in the chat. And I hope to connect with you to maybe plan a really impactful and a really meaningful event for young people and students with disabilities in your community. Thank you so much. And I'll put those links in right now. And I'll hand it on over to you, Aubriana.
Thank you so much, Gabi. I will now hand it over to Alexia, who's going to share some national updates. Next slide, please.
Hello, everyone. This is Alexia. So wanted to take a few minutes before our panel just to share some updates from the federal advocacy space. I am going to guess that most folks on this call, being that you're advocates, are aware that the budget reconciliation bill did pass, which means one $1 trillion in cuts to Medicaid and cuts to other essential programs and services. This is really devastating and is going to impact our communities. And while it's effective immediately, we did just want to really emphasize and stress that not all of these effects are going to be felt right away. And we can still build community support and advocate at the state and local level. We also wanted to emphasize that a lot of these changes are going to happen after November. And what happens in November? It is election day in so many states, right? So don't forget to use that opportunity to use your power and voice your disapproval on these policy decisions that were made. And even though the time for advocating against this specific bill has passed, our core message is still the same, right? Our core message is still investing in these essential programs, investing in disabled people and communities, and we can still advocate on that message to our congressional elected officials, and especially, though, to our state officials who are going to have even more power now in determining what these programs look like. So AAPD's policy team is going to be hosting a webinar in the next few weeks and putting out an additional explainer in the next few weeks about what the impacts of this bill are going to look like. So keep an eye out on your emails for that invite. And in the meantime, please feel free to check out our Medicaid Hub, which has some state level advocacy resources for folks and some explainers. So we'll put that link in the chat. And just as a reminder, all links in the chat today, we will email them out to you afterwards.
Alexia,
Yeah, go ahead, Allie.
did you get the email I sent to you, Jen, Blaine, and AJ about the Reddit thread?
This Alexia, I did. Thank you, Allie.
That is for I created a Reddit thread, you guys, and for those that don't know what I've been working with Alexia on is to create a raid Oklahoma. And we had our first meeting this month and everything. And we're going to be working on having another meeting in August and everything. And so I created a community. It's called Inspire Youth with Disabilities. And I gave Alexia the name and I got everything cleared up. So that way, and it's a community, not a thread. It's an actual community. And it's not just for the Raid Oklahoma. It's going to be a community for Raid Oklahoma, Rev Up, the national, like in all of us for that come to the national calls. It can be one for the Rev Up in other states. It's a place for all of us to come together, brainstorm, come together as one. It's like all of us as disabilities come together, uniting one thread. Since we had all of these budget cuts and everything, this is our little home on the internet and everything, our little community that we can have. And while I'm the administrator on there, Alexia, if you'd like to join me, or someone else would like to join me as being a co-administrator or whatever, let me know, and
Awesome.
I
Yeah,
will add you to it.
that is awesome. Thank you so much, Allie. I'm thinking this will be great if to continue discussing in our breakout rooms. This is so timely, and I'm so glad that you have created it and brought it up. That is wonderful. A couple other quick updates. There are some remaining federal budget pieces that will be passed, and so there's an opportunity for us to mobilize to protect the protection and advocacy for voting accessibility funding, which supports a ton of important work. And so I will be sending a sign-on letter and form for you all to sign on to if your organizations and coalitions are interested. And then lastly, I wanted to share an update. Many of our Rev Up coalitions participated in providing comments on a recent development with the Election Assistance Commission. And so I really want to shout out and thank Rev Up New York and Rev Up Tennessee for their rapid response advocacy. And if you also saw and were following along this issue, I wanted to provide a positive update on federal advocacy, which is that the Election Assistance Commission attempted to go around processes and pass some harmful changes really quickly on voting systems guidelines. But over 400 people submitted comments with less than a week's notice, which is incredible, and slowed down that process. So there was no vote taken on these potential harmful changes, and the process will now go through a longer, months-long review and public comment period. So I will keep you all in the loop of when other opportunities come up from that. So thank you so much for our Rev Up members, though, who have been on top of it. Next slide, please. A couple of other fun, quick updates. Don't forget, Disability Voting Rights Week is September 8th through 12th. The toolkit will be available by the end of July, and we're really excited that we will have shareable graphics this year in English, Spanish, American Sign Language, Chinese, Hindi, Korean, Tagalog, and Vietnamese. And I am so grateful for our partners for helping us create these materials and to Rev Up Illinois for giving us the feedback to include more languages. So I'm really excited. And then we also have a funding opportunity for individual disabled organizers. And we will put a link in the chat to learn about that opportunity. The deadline to apply is July 25th. Sharing this for the first time here, and a larger email will go out soon as well. And then lastly, and then I promise we'll get to what everyone joined for, which was this amazing panel. The last thing is just us being curious. If anyone is coming to the National Conference on Independent Living in DC, please email us at RevUpAAPD. We will be tabling at the conference. We want to see you and hang out in person. Okay, that is all I have, and I'll pass back to you, Aubriana.
This is Aubriana. Thank you so much, Alexia. And next slide, please. So now we're going to move into today's panel on youth engagement and organizing, and I'm super excited to introduce our amazing guests for today's call. Next slide, please. So first, we have Adam Rizzoli, who is an autistic disability advocate who has done a lot of organizing on his college campus and in the higher education space. Adam is also a member of Rev Up Virginia. Next, we have Oliver Stab, a community organizer in California and 2024 Rev Up grantee. Their project focused on engaging first-time and marginalized voters at the California School for the Deaf, Fremont. Oliver also serves on Alameda County's Voting Accessibility Advisory Committee and registers voters with headcount. And then finally, we have two wonderful organizers joining us from the Young Voices Action Collective, or YVAC, who is also another 2024 Rev Up grantee. KJ Daniels is the organization and policy chair of YVAC and a recent pre-law graduate from Howard University. Zion Afanu Flowers is an undergraduate student at Alabama AMU University and is a strong advocate around COVID-19 safety. We'll also have Devonte Johnson, the co-founder of YVAC, joining us to facilitate one of our breakout sessions later on. So we'll bring him on for an intro before the breakout rooms begin. And just a reminder, if you're interested in learning more about each of our panelists, you can check out their bios in the Mobilize event description, and we'll throw that link in the chat. Okay, now we're going to start with the panel. April, if you could please take the slides down. And then for our panelists, before you respond to your first question, we invite you to please share your name, pronouns, and a brief visual description. So our first question is going to be directed towards Oliver. Oliver, as a leader, what strategies have you used to help young people build community through advocacy?
Thank you so much. I am Oliver. For a visual description, I am a white Mac-looking person. I am here in my home office. I have a white background with some homemade art on the wall behind me. I'm wearing a blue t-shirt. And I want to talk about some strategies that I have used in helping youth to organize and become advocates. So youth burnout is real right now. We're seeing a lot of young people, specifically young disabled people, who feel like the risk and the experience that they've encountered is just too much. We're seeing support systems wane, and we're seeing a lot more apathy. And that's related to burnout because of just the system and the barriers in those systems, just individual issues, and mostly public health concerns. The need for connection really is urgent with these youth. Civic engagement and civic advocacy, especially around like medical things, around organizing, volunteering, of course, voting and whatnot, really can provide social connection for these individuals. They can find shared passion with other people, with their peers, with mentors, a shared sense of purpose, and they can really help to kick that isolation out of their world. As a personal experience, I've seen as an advocate, I've seen people make huge changes with public health interventions and just being able to find friends and find community. And that's a huge foundation that is required. And I've noticed that in my organization or organizing work. And it's really, really hugely important. It's important that peers with shared generation, shared culture, shared language, and of course, my community, but we have to make sure that we're not being talked to, right? But that people are talking with each other. It's a huge investment in youth, and it has to happen before any kind of meaningful dialogue or engagement can occur. So yeah, that's why I have moved forward with partnering and leadership with youth. All of the youth center initiatives, I really 100% depend on collaboration with the youth, and I try to give them the stage. So for example, at the California School for the Deaf, it's a little bit of a different platform when you're talking about voter registration. A lot of students aren't really interested. So if I'm trying to table right in there, they'll just kind of walk past and ignore me. But I noticed that if their peers are sitting there at the table with me, now they're engaged and they're willing to have a conversation because they have a trusted community there. And it's good for them to see adults that they can copy, essentially, right? Adults that they can look up to, that they can use as a role model. So that relationship, that lasting relationship, enables engagement, and getting, advocacy into the minds of young people. And that's really our goal. There's so much I could discuss. There's so many important strategies, things that you can use that I haven't mentioned. Of course, there's compensation that matters. We have really appreciated having support from REV UP so that we can compensate people for their time as they are contributing to projects. And those contributions, those gifts that we're asking from others as well, really go a long ways and they make a difference. It allows us to have stability and allows us to have respect in our work. So experience is important, but compensation is also important. It's been really great and able to be able to meet young people where they are, and be informed by age appropriate topics, right? So appropriate pedagogy, right? They're not small adults. Often we take advantage of young people because we don't know um, that they have, we don't really know where their baseline is, let's say. So we need to learn, we need to know where they're at. We need to meet them where they are. We need to figure out, what's their style? How do they like to connect? And how do we create meaning for them and create tools that are effective for them that will work for people of that same age? Whether it's in written English, whether you're having strong visual aids, just creating spaces for interaction and learning and focusing on clarity, not so much complacency, right? Yeah, and making sure that you're defining terms as well, giving people just that opportunity to connect. So as they're learning, they can apply these things to their daily lives and they can increase their lived expertise. And I think that's it.
Thank you so much, Oliver. This is Aubriana. Thank you for speaking about how we can really think about the ways we're building community and supporting one another and teaching and learning from each other in our Rev Up coalitions. So, reflecting on these themes around building community and organizing young people, I'm going to turn to KJ. YVAC is a movement built by and for Black, Indigenous young people of color. I'm wondering, KJ, what moved you to form a DC YVAC chapter while you were a student at Howard University? What organizing strategies did you learn were most effective in your work?
Okay, this is Khalil Daniels. I am a young African American man with dreadlocks, maybe to my shoulders or so. I have on a polka dotted blue shirt, and my background is kind of all over the place, guys. I'm in a lounge at work on break, but I just could not miss this conversation. I couldn't miss this panel. So Aubriana, I appreciate that question. And, Miss Wilson, I also appreciate your answer because you hit it right on the head with the youth connecting with the youth. And that's just something that's so major. So to answer your question, Aubriana, what made me start the Howard chapter of YVAC, I just want to let you guys know that YVAC was already formed and founded by Devontae, who was already on this call, who is one of the principals. But once I applied for YVAC, after realizing what type of organization it was, just an organization that gave back, that was youth led, that was kind of my baseline knowledge. You know, Me and Tay had a talk that kind of gave that he kind of gave me the gas. If I was a car, he gave me the gas to start, a chapter at Howard. And it turned into something that I just wanted to do, to stamp a legacy, but to also show that, this type of work needs to be done all over the country. And it wasn't anywhere in the DMV area or in the Howard area that was doing something like that, which was, building with the youth, as the youth. So I just think that that is so important because it allows more of a connection, when you're speaking from generation to the same generation. Of course, we want to pull from other generations and we want other generations' ideas and support and things like that. But like Miss Wilson said, kids are more likely to stop at your table when they see other kids. They're more likely to listen. They're more likely to be receptive to the ideas and the challenges that you may have for them. You know, a lot of times when kids get challenged to be better, whether it's terms of political education or civic education or voter engagement, you know, they may shy away from someone that's outside their comfort zone or older than them, you know, um, relaying that information to them. They may see it as somebody being overbearing or, you know, things of that sort. So, you know, thank you for that question. But that's why I wanted to start a chapter at Howard, just to increase that legacy of student activism and, you know, that continuation of the work that needs to be done. And that's all for me.
This is Avriana. That was such a powerful example of, I think, really thinking about the impact of youth leadership within organizing. And what KJ shared makes me curious about how we can continue to foster young leaders in our coalition. So I'm going to invite Adam. As a young organizer, what resources or learnings have been the most impactful in supporting your work? What support do you think young neurodivergent people need to succeed?
Thank you for the question. Can everybody hear me all right? Just checking. Fantastic. So, quick visual description. My name is Adam Rizzoli. I am a white 22-year-old male with an orange beard and a short black hair with a curly top. I'm also wearing black headphones around my ears, and I'm wearing a green collared shirt. So, to answer the question on what resources have been most impactful for supporting my work, I think the way to start is to talk about what exactly my work has been. And so, the overarching goal throughout my time as a disabled leader is to directly improve the lives of disabled people and disabled students in higher education. And so, the ways I've been able to do so is first, I founded a student organization to connect hundreds of students to directly solve the problem of loneliness that the disabled community experiences in my community. And it has been a remarkable success connecting hundreds of students who are now friends with each other. There's people who have gotten jobs, who've gotten long-term relationships that are dating to this day because of who they met through UBU. And as also together, this organization with my leadership has pushed for major changes at both the university and state level. At the university level, we streamlined the accommodation system to improve the renewal system because it used to be very slow. It would take weeks to months. And so we helped the university vastly improve the system so that when you submit a renewal for accommodations, it's like a week rather than months of waiting. We helped the university unify the reporting system because they used to have the issue where they would have multiple forms to report a barrier. And so we encouraged them to unify it. And I've also, through my leadership, I have also spoken before the state legislature, which has helped pass laws that have governed govern our life, particularly leading to a student survey created by REV to assess the State Higher Council of Education of Virginia to assess our needs, which I also got appointed to help advise the creation of that survey. And then later on, changes to the accommodation system more broadly were passed through the bill that I advocated for. And so these things have been directly successful in improving the quality of life of disabled students at Mason. And how I was able to do so were a couple of things. The first thing was other students. UBU was absolutely essential to connecting me to hundreds of students because I can't talk about the issues that students experience and identify solutions without knowing hundreds of people to talk to. They help me support the advocacy. It helps build legitimacy. And so, as a young person, finding other young people has been the most important thing that's an impact in my work. The second most important thing has been support from people in administration and people in places of authority. The campus administration, professors, administrators have been largely accepting and approving of my work and have done, and whenever they have the option to not help me and to help me, they've largely chosen to help me as long as it didn't mean that much work for them. And so the fact that my campus administration is largely helpful rather than in opposition to me is very good. And the big reason why I gained the cooperation is I'm directly reaching out to them. And these two elements together of having students directly reach out to campus administration, lawmakers, have been absolutely invaluable for creating and supporting my work. And so these two elements together of having students lobby university administrators, lobbying lawmakers, is exactly how I made a lot of these things happen. A student helped connect me to Chev for me to get that appointment. A student helped connect me to the lawmakers who passed the law, and a student, in fact, wrote the bill that I advocated for. And so these are absolutely essential together. In terms of supporting young people, there's a couple of takeaways. The first thing that helped me a lot was a lot of my mentors and a lot of the students that worked with me were very good at directly communicating with me. They would tell me what they needed. They would tell me about how to help them. They would tell me what steps that I could do to tangibly improve their life. The second takeaway is that what helped me was creating tangible policy goals and clear ways of measuring impacts that are in line with problems disabled population experiences. Also, students were lonely, so I wanted to connect them together, and I was able to create a study that showed that my organization connected hundreds of people to create friendships. I was able to show that we needed to improve the accommodation system response times for the university administration, and so that has a tangible impact of reducing that time. Another takeaway is reaching out to disabled leaders. I reached out to disabled leaders in my community, and those have been able to work well together, but also people who reached out to me were able to get so much more done. And that right there is the most important thing, is directly reaching out to disabled leaders, reaching out to disabled students. If you see a disabled student or a disabled person who is young and always active and working around, just reaching out to them, offering to give them like mentorship, offering to give them advice if that's what they want, directly communicating expectations are absolutely invaluable for helping more people achieve the things that I have done as an autistic student at George Mason University. Thank you.
This is Aubriana. Thank you so much, Adam, for highlighting the importance of mentorship, friendship, and strategies to increase inclusion. Access is often a crucial practice that I think about when retaining new coalition members. And Zion, I'm wondering, as a young organizer, what aspects do you look for when searching for an advocacy community to join? This could be accessibility, shared values, ways to get engaged.
Hey y'all, can y'all hear me?
Yes,
Oh,
sir.
this is Zion, by the way. Um, just for a quick description, I'm a young black 19-year-old male. I got a gold septum piercing and blonde dyed dreads, kind of hanging in my face, and I'm wearing black headphones, and a white shirt. Um, what I look for in organizations is firstly, like accessibility. Like, are you intersectional? Are you caring for everybody? Because I personally believe that we're not, like, I'm not free unless you free too. You know what I'm saying? So if an organization is just focused on one single issue and doesn't even think to mention like intersectionality or how other issues that other communities may face kind of just align, then that's kind of a red flag for me because it feels short-sighted. Like there's no action that exists in a bubble. There's no person that exists without the influence of another. So yeah, that's what I would say.
Thank you so much, Zion, for centering the importance of intersectionality and thinking about the ways in which that our Rev Up work is intersecting with so many different social justice issues and movements. And also bringing the perspective, I think, of a perspective organizer and what they're looking for to get involved in an advocacy community. I think I'm now reflecting on how young people get engaged and wondering if Oliver, can you walk us through your approach to starting a conversation with a young deaf or hard of hearing person about voting? What does it look like to work backwards, which is an idea I've heard you share a little bit about in the past.
Good question. Working backwards for me means starting with what is real to the student, not something that's abstract, like the concept of democracy or civic duty. Instead, I use issue-based advocacy that is rooted in something that they care about on a personal level, disability rights, education. And then from there, I will trace how the government coincides with things that affect them, like their IEP, educational budgets, or bills that prevent access. After COVID, the process of engaging deaf youth required more purpose. Many deaf individuals are language deprived severely because they don't have access to meaningful communication. Many high school students that I work with are reading at an elementary level. So the materials that we have, I can't just give to them to read and understand. They have to be adapted. I make sure that it's culturally adapted as well as linguistically adapted. And I reframe the ideas to how signers will understand the information. So American Sign Language is a social language, and often we share context in our language. For example, if I talk about voting, I don't start with the word voting. I don't assume that the student knows what that means. I might say, you know how every 4 years people come together and they go and pick a president or they pick the mayor? That is voting. So it's important to build context and cultural connection. I also use recursive check-ins to make sure that everyone I'm working with is understanding. I love my collaborator, Molly Christensen, who works at the California School for the Deaf at Fremont. As a social studies teacher, she supported students in actually proposing and passing a bill in placing a sign at the highway near the School for the Deaf. And that started from the students' lived experience. Many of the students asked why there wasn't a sign that was visible from the highway to direct family members who might have deaf kids to know where the School for the Deaf is. And so that led to learning about legislation and how proposing bills works and how it goes through the Congress in order to be passed into law. And so that's what I mean about working backwards. Students saw a need based on their personal experience. It had relevance. The teacher built on existing knowledge in order for them to be able to make a change. When I register voters, regardless of if it's at the high school or at a festival, I try to avoid asking the question, are you registered to vote? Because a yes, no question will shut down the conversation. Instead, I ask, or I lead with curiosity and ask them what they're interested in. So it's a challenging balance to hit when you're entering a conversation. You're trying to prepare content and some sort of script and also explore the conversation together. I try to keep up to date about ballot measures that are happening in my community. And when they come up, hopefully conversationally, if someone says they are really care about civil rights, I will then drop a current bill that might impact them. And also I talk to them about being able to early register at 16. The act of voting, I help them, is connected to what they're actually voting for and the why behind why they're voting.
This is Aubriana. Thank you, Oliver. Your best practice around fostering genuine connections with voters and really listening to them and what they care about. I think you really
And
show
this
makes a
Opal
world.
has a comment too, if you don't mind, Aubriana. Sorry. So this is Opal. I didn't mean to interrupt, but I just wanted to add on to what Oliver was saying. So a lot of deaf and hard of hearing individuals, their first language is American Sign Language, right? English is a second language for them. And then also the issue of literacy that was brought up. A lot of people deaf individuals don't understand why voting is important and why they should vote. So here in New York City, we have a lot of deaf international folks, people who have migrated to the US from other countries. And some of them understand voting rights. Some of them have become citizens. They have learned about the process, but they don't actually vote. A lot of deaf individuals, deaf and hard of hearing individuals who were born here, even who are Americans, they don't always understand what voting means and how that impacts the world. So, like Oliver mentioned, you probably wouldn't start with, voting. You would go in that conversation and give them some context, right? You've got to hear what issues are big to them, what things are important to them, and then you have to work from there, giving examples to help people understand the impact and help get them thinking about why they should be involved. That's a really great way to convince, especially young people. If you're thinking about going to if they're thinking about going to maybe a public school rather than a deaf school for maybe their junior, senior year of high school, they may hear about these things, whereas in a deaf school, they may not, right? And if they're in those regular public schools, they're interacting with their peers, and that's like at that time, that's kind of the most important thing in life for them, right? But we're trying to also find a way to convince them and help them understand that they can make a change by doing little things like making a poster or just doing little things here and there. So that's been a big challenge for me as well. So thanks for letting me add that.
This is Aubriana. Thank you so much, Opal. I really appreciate both you and Oliver emphasizing the impact of education in our organizing work and how we are inviting folks in and not assuming that they have background in the conversation we're hoping to have with them. This is making me think about um, the way that we communicate with people, both in person and online, is so important. And I want to invite KJ. Can you walk us through your strategy around social media and messaging to engage youth? How can we take our message around empowering the disability vote and attract young people with disabilities online?
Okay, yes, that is a great question. This is Khalil. This is Khalil, guys. So it is so important to reach the youth on different platforms and different mediums. So one thing that I studied in college was communication. So they always would tell us how important it is to reach people through different mediums, whether that's television, whether it's radio, whether it's you know, I don't know what, come up with different mediums to reach them, but don't just reach them physically going to schools or doing this. You have to have a plethora of options to choose from when you're trying to reach the youth because a lot of us are different and a lot of us have different things that we are engaged in. So to get the most out of, the people you're trying to reach, you have to be able to come from different angles. So another big thing that's going around right now that's trending is social media. TikTok, Instagram, I'm getting kind of old guys, so I don't know what new apps they have, but TikTok and Instagram is definitely two places that we have to reach the youth. We have to come with creative content. We have to look at the trends and we have to, intertwine the trends with our messages so that, you know, to put it frankly, so that the youth aren't just getting bored with our message and that they're actually engaged with it, they're receiving it, and they're receiving it in a positive light. So that's something that I would definitely say. That you guys should begin to harp on more, that we should begin to harp on more too, because that's something that YBAC is also focusing on. Another thing that YBAC uses is our SOTI tool, which stands for State of the Young. So that tool is a survey that we use to collect data all over the country, and we use that data to foster the direction that we want to go in with our organization. And when I say direction, I mean the specific target areas, whether it be, policing in schools or policing out of schools, whether it be, budget constraints with SROs, or, mental health support compared to SROs, different complexities like that. So, having a tool like that, having a survey tool allows the youth to feel heard, but also allows your organization to have direction on, what target areas you want to specifically focus on and attack. So that's something that I think is very important. But you also just can't forget to the physical aspect as well, like going into schools. We're a youth led organization, so we think it's very important to get in the community where the youth is, go to those schools and speak to them, to catch them early. And with disabled persons, I feel like it'll be imperative to make those connections early, so that they can begin to advocate for themselves, and then the message just begins to spread. So then everyone's advocating, they're teaching each other how to advocate while we're also teaching them how to advocate. And then, the campaign just continues to build that way. So that's what I would have to say.
Thank you so much, KJ, for guiding us on how we can think about meeting them where they are and then incorporating storytelling that resonates and how to really better understand our different target audiences.
Yes, yes, yes. And also, I'm so glad you mentioned the exact word storytelling, because I forgot to say it. But yeah, that's what our tool is. It's a storytelling tool. So then you take the stories that you're getting, and you may have different departments in your organization that can expound on those stories or put them in a way that's more receptive to the youth or to who you're trying to reach, whether that be turning a story into a short movie, or you know uh collage, or different things like that. So thank you for that tidbit as well, Adriana.
This is Aubriana, of course. And I think when we're talking about youth, it makes me think about this term Gen Z. So Gen Z is generally defined as people born between 1995 and 2010. And I identify as a Gen Z advocate myself. And when I think about Gen Z, I'm thinking about us coming to age in a time of increased awareness around disability and inclusion. And I'm wondering, Adam, if you could speak to, in your organizing work, how have you seen Gen Z's perspectives on disability differ from those of older generations of advocates and activists?
Thank you. Yeah, I think a big thing that when I think of being a member of Gen Z and disabled is I think the first thing word that comes to me is open. And that's because throughout my entire life, I have received a diagnosis, I have got support, constant communication from both disabled and non-disabled people about how my disability affects my life. And I feel like this perspective dominates many people who are disabled members of Gen Z. If you look at the demographics of people that identify as disabled and people who participate in disability advocacy, you really see a bimodal distribution. In other words, two high areas of concentration. You see older folks who traditionally, as you know, as many of you on the call, retired, um, disability acquired from life. Maybe it's a disability that you have acquired younger in life, but now you have enough resources and knowledge to support. And disability is something that you can do, activism you can do as a product of being retired. Meanwhile, I say for Gen Z, disability for our community is usually as acquired as much as something you are born with due to the rise of explosion and diagnosis. You're seeing massive swaths, or at least comparable to other generations, being diagnosed with autism, ADHD, anxiety, depression, and getting good and effective treatment for these conditions. And so for Gen Z, a lot of these things are as the only life we've ever known. Disabled Gen Z often associates being disabled as something that is being completely dominating an aspect of our life. And with this in mind, we are, as a result, a lot more open about it because A, we don't know how to, pretend how to not be disabled, but also pretending not be disabled, especially for Gen Z, is statistically punishing. There's a lot of good studies, particularly by Noah Sasson, about how, particularly for autistic people, that the impression of autistic people by people who are not autistic is not affected by the label of being autistic. Meaning that if you are an autistic person and you don't tell someone you're autistic, they're not going to think that you are any better or worse because you tell them. By hiding being autistic, you do not receive social benefits. By hiding being yourself, your life does not meaningfully get better, especially if your goal is to make friends, get a job, be socially accepted, key priorities for people who are of my generation. What we see here, though, is from these studies, is that the things that do influence people's perceptions of disabled people in a positive way is having awareness of it, having knowledge about it, being aware of people that are disabled. Because they found that if you are an autistic person who discloses that you're autistic and the person then understands, has a background knowledge of autistic people, that improves social interactions in so many different metrics. It also makes finding other disabled people a lot easier. So many of my friendships have started by me at a disability event saying, "Hey, I'm autistic." And they say, "Hey, I'm autistic too." And that's how our conversation starts. Being openly disabled and encouraging people to be ourselves is a phenomenal and important part of being Gen Z. We do not hide it when we are ourselves. And a lot of this communication takes place online, via social media, and through open communications. And so, what are some takeaways from this? I think the first thing is that if you are, someone who interacting with someone Gen Z and they start the conversation with, "I'm autistic, I have ADHD, I am depressed, I have a this XY condition." These are signs that somebody not only respects you, but it's also they are comfortable, at least they highly value this. This is something that is important for members of Gen Z, and so thinking that's something that has been socially selected in favor of in our generation in ways that probably hasn't been for other generations. A second takeaway is in having an online presence. What I like to talk about in meetings, organizing stuff for REV UP Virginia is for many members of Gen Z, if you do not post about your event online, if you do not talk about your event online, if you don't talk about what you do about yourself, if you have no online social media presence, we won't know that you exist. We won't. And so having an online social media presence, particularly about how being open about what you do, is an absolutely invaluable way to connect with Gen Z. Being authentically yourself and open about it, and ironically not shutting up about it, and as an autistic person, very good at, is very much selected for in terms of connecting us. Finally, the last thing is just thinking about priorities and how young people approach a situation. Compared to other people, we have less money, we have less time, we have a lot more passion, but not necessarily a lot of knowledge on how to apply this passion. And so thinking about how you can connect with young people and making an active effort about how our perception of the world might be different from other people's perception of the world is very useful in terms of getting our support, getting our involvement, and connecting the bridge between the big generational gap, because we really don't see a lot of disabled advocates from Gen X and millennials. And so that's a big fundamental gap that I'd say is important to connect.
This is Aubriana. Thank you, Adam. I love the celebration of disability pride, and I really appreciate your perspective on the generational differences around disability. And I think that's really valuable for us to learn from. I'm also going to invite Devonte, who will be one of our guest facilitators for a breakout room, to share his perspective as well.
Yeah, thank you so much, Aubriana. This is Devontae. Pronouns are he, him, his, or just Tay, T-A-E. I am wearing clear glasses, a white t-shirt, a black skull cap that says, if I tilt it all the way down, it says Detroit. You might not be able to see that because most of the time I'll be right here. But that's where I am. I'm a black male, and I have a blurred background inside of a motor vehicle. Um, Peace again, family. I serve as the principal of the YBAC Fund, and first of all, great conversation so far. Really appreciative to all of the knowledge and wisdom that is here. I also just want to ground us in a little bit of more context and also like piggyback off what Zion said about intersectionality. It's very important that we point out that experiences from Black young people's specifically experiences with disabilities are graver, in some places can be graver and in fact more dangerous, life-threatening, a shorter term of life. Specifically, even going further for like Black men with disabilities who go at higher rates of being underdiagnosed or not diagnosed. And then I also want to like put emphasis too that there, when we are engaging young people in like any spectrum of organizing period, specifically around disability justice or mental health, those two in particular, there's a stigma around mental health just as well as there's a stigma around disability. So like growing up in school, a young person with ADHD, a young person of color in cities like Detroit and Philadelphia with behavioral problems, it was always suggested that you had ADHD or like other disabilities that include that you had a fear of like furthering investigating, like if that's true, going to like get diagnostics, because the result of you being diagnosed with ADHD or like other disabilities mean that you will be criminalized further inside of that school system. And so like there is a piece around like how do we engage young people period in organizing work that encompasses whatever you're impacted by, like and I think KJ and Zion and also Oliver talked about it beautifully, like the intersectionality of people's issues. And then it's also like beyond the issues, there's intersectionality between disabilities. There's there's the same decision makers for like the same folks who are blind, for the same folks who need a little bit mobility access, or folks who like need more need ASL. And so I also wanted to like say that there is less resources, period, for young people to create their own alternatives in community spaces like Adam built. Particularly, there's less resources for Black young people in communities of color that's already underserved, underinvested in intentionally to resource their own alternatives of safe spaces and even alternatives. But I am reminded again about mutual aid and abolition. I want to ground us that we talked about this before in our prep, that if it wasn't for disabled folks who knew that they had a different ability, a different scale of ability, saying that we need extra support in X, Y, and Z, we wouldn't have a disability movement, especially coming out of the 50s. And I think that's the same thing for like youth organizing. I think that's the same thing for like police accountability. I think it's the same thing for like LGBTQ rights. I think one thing we need to do is start convening people, period, and convening young people and figuring out where on the spectrum, if any, like our young people are placed, and then figuring out what resources do we need infrastructurally and programmatically to sustain young people with different abilities and who are differently able. And I think also there's a lack of conversation specifically in our communities and even in our organizing culture about invisible disabilities and neurodivergency, which also is a huge factor from people participating. And then like lastly, before I pass it on, it's like there's a huge lack of diagnoses for people with disabilities at a young age, specifically from Black hoods, specifically from Detroit. There's a huge lack of diagnoses, access to medical care, access to physicians in primary care, access to mental health practitioners, and even mental health like therapists. There's a huge lack and shortage of those resources that are readily and accessibly available, or for people to even know that they exist and access it. There's people who before now had Medicaid who didn't know that their Medicaid covered a certain allotment of therapy, of like, and like their whatever their package is. And I think that there's resources out here, there's spaces out here, there's communities out here like Adam has built, and and amazing organizing work that's happening. And I think that there's a lot of power in simplicity of like, let's first talk about what a disability is so that we can destigmatize it. And like, once we destigmatize disability, once we destigmatize like mental health and different variations of mental health, then we like see that number, we no longer are the minority. Like that number grows because we have more people who are willing to seek out where they need help at, which then like propels our community to have a better experience in life because we're all getting the things that we need. And if we start with the destigmatizing, that's also a great opportunity to base build. How do we build people power around not how do we start building people power around accessibility and just creating space for us to have space, and then building power around yes us people with disabilities or like people who are neurodivergent, or who even have mental disorders have that as an issue and need resources and need to advocate for the resources and legislation to support the safe and full livelihood of our experience. And we still need fair housing, and we still need fully funded educations, and we still need our communities. These Black hoods don't need to be in food deserts that causes people to have disabilities. Like, and there's a conversation about how these things intersect, and I think as simple as we can say it, it's just one step at a time. And then lastly, shout out to KJ mentioned the storytelling tool. That's like before young people, whether they're getting a service, a lot of times before young people get a service from us or like hit us up or join a town hall or get to like tell their story or anything like that, we're listening, doing deep listening through our storytelling tool to hear. Because there's a lot of young people who's like, that's my form of activism, is speaking. I'm resisting by resisting the urge to stay silent. And like, that's a huge form that needs to be celebrated, because we have an expectation for young people. And again, going back to specifically people who are directly impacted by these issues, disabled folks, Black folks, to be on the front lines, but we don't have the resources to support their livelihood outside of the sacrifice on the front lines. And I'll stop there. Peace. Thank y'all.
This is Aubriana. Thank you so much, Devonte. There's so much wisdom and power in what you shared with us, and I hope that we can continue those conversations in our breakout rooms.
Yes, Alexia, I love that dialogue between all of our panelists happening right now. Thank you all so much. And I love even seeing some intergenerational connections developing live. I saw Mark Safman from New York City shared in the chat that he appreciated Adam's shout out of Gen Xers here on our call. And Mark is a deafblind Black man and has really used his lived experience and accessibility practices to reach people specifically in the deaf-blind community, and specifically people in the Black deaf and Black deaf blind community. So hoping to see Adam and Mark connect afterwards too. And I know we have one more question before we move to breakout rooms.
This is Ariana. Yes, thank you, Alexia. So before we close out, I would love to explore together how young people often bring new ideas to advocacy. And I'm wondering, Zion, if you could share a little bit about what the future of our democracy and electoral system do you think young people are dreaming of today? And what role do these dreams play in organizing?
Hey y'all, this is Zion. So to your question, I think a lot of people are kind of moving beyond the electoral system, beyond just everything that how should I say this? Everything that we're used to, that we're mobilizing around, such as voting and the electoral system and things like that. I feel like a lot of people, even generationally, not just like Gen Z, but generationally, are kind of just organizing amongst themselves and feeling like, okay, the government is not doing it, hasn't been doing it, so we got to do it ourselves. And I feel like that's even how these movements started. Like it didn't I'm sorry, I'm a little nervous. But these movements started with the people, right? We didn't wait on other entities to give us rights, like we had to fight for them. And it's the same kind of idea among young people right now. It's like, okay, I voted and nothing changed. My immediate reality didn't improve, and the immediate a reality around the people that I know and love didn't improve. It actually got worse. So like, how do I step in? What do I do to, help my folks, help my community, right? And so people are kind of just looking back to specifically like the 70s organizers such as the Black Panther Party and the ideas of like mutual aid and things like that, just community in general. Yeah, that's pretty much all I have to say. But thank you for asking me that question because I feel like a lot of the time um people will ask me specifically because I'm very open about not really believing in the electoral system as the end all be all of activism and how to get things done. And people look to me for answers about what to do in lieu of that. And I just feel like me having this platform on this panel could reach more people who probably would have the same question, like, how do we move beyond what is the alternative?
This is Aubriana. Thank you so much, Zion, for exploring with us a vision for the future. And also, I think what I'm hearing so much from all of you incredible panelists is how do we work within our current democratic systems to make them more accessible, as well as how do we begin to dream of and build towards new systems together to sustain our our movement and our community and ourselves. So recognizing that we want to create some space for some questions and answers from our audience, but we're a little tight on time, so we might just invite two folks to ask questions. I see
Yes,
Kathy.
Alexia. I'll also read out from the chat. Teresa Hurd shared that she is feeling really inspired by this conversation as a mom of a 24-year-old Black man with a disability and looking forward to connect. And I will, if you all aren't able to grab each other's emails, we can help connect folks after the call too. And then I see Kathy has her hand up.
Hi, I'm Kathy Collins. I have a blue background. I'm wearing purple headphones. I'm a she, her. I'm very bad at grammar. I'm wearing a pink top with no sleeves, and I'm a congenital quadruple amputee, which means from birth, missing above my arms. Sorry, above my elbows and above my knees. My question to everyone here is, it's obvious that you can reach out to colleges and even high schools to engage young people. But what about the people that don't go to college, that, there's also vocational schools, but where else can we reach out to them? Where should we go to reach out to them? And also, I'm glad you told us about social media because I have to up my game on social media. And as to the electoral college, um, the one thing I think we need to urge our young people is to read up on these things and why we have them in place and to understand why they exist before we start just thinking about dismantling them. Because I know the electoral college, one of the purposes is to protect the smaller states. Otherwise we'd be the two large states, New York State, which I come from, and California could really be the states that could decide every election. And so that's something that, you need to understand your history and even the history of the disability movement. Nothing happens in a day. You have to recognize that fact. It takes time and years. And so I'd just like to bring that to your attention. But yeah, can you answer my question? Sorry.
Thank you so much, Kathy. I'm going to go to Oliver and then Adam.
That is such a great question. It's the million-dollar question there, Kathy. So I find that my most successful voter registration drives are in places where people are already congregating. So, for example, concerts, That is my number one place that I attend, and often um, I'll set up with different venues in my area, right? I'll just like have a relationship with them. So when shows are coming up, I'll show up about 2 hours before the show. I have a team of people that I have trained previous to that. And we spend about 4 hours, and there are so many people that come to that venue. They're trying to find seats, they're talking, and often we'll bring swag or giveaways for people, buttons, um, even like earbuds, earplugs as well, because that'll draw people to the table because some people don't love having that loud music in their ears. But yeah, finding events, parades, even protests. One of my most valuable experiences actually recently was San Francisco had at City Hall, there was a trans rights march and I attended with my table. And we were able to register 5 young people right there. It was their first time registering to vote who never even realized that they had to register, right? They didn't know what that looked like. So we're asking young people in the community as well, where do you go for fun? And then we partner with those people, partner with the managers, partner with people ahead of time so that when events are happening, there's a space for you. If you're interested in seeing what that looks like, I have an organization that I partner with that is called Handouts, and they specifically live for this purpose, right? They're trying to catch young people where they are. It's often concerts for us.
Thank you so much. This is Aubriana. I'm going to pass to Adam
Thank you.
and Zion.
So if
This is
there's two parts.
Alexia. Wait, sorry, quick correction. I think it's head count, right? Is that right, Oliver? Head count is the name of your partner org. Yeah. Just wanted to correct that. Okay.
Thank you. Perfect.
Fantastic. Yeah. So I see there's two bits of the question there. It's the first is how do you reach people who aren't necessarily colleges or high schools? I think there's a couple of ways to do so. First, I think Oliver's ways I mentioned are fantastic creative ways that haven't even occurred to me. So yes, all that answer all the way. Huge shout out to concerts and just place that young people who aren't necessarily college educated congregate. But there's also a couple of areas that I would recommend reaching out to people. I think the first thing is talking to students that are disabled in college and asking them to bring their friends and ask them to bring their network. I think I know almost every disabled student I know at a college has a disabled friend that dropped out, couldn't afford college, doesn't have just too disabled to go to college. I'd say about a third of my friends who I were close in high school were unable to go to college just by wanting to go. And I bring those people to events, and I think it'd be very hard to reach any of those people without me. And so I think that's a good first start. I think telling people to bring their networks. I think the other thing, as you mentioned already, online presence. I think the fastest way you can reach every single one of the people who didn't go to college of my disabled friends is the internet. They all use the internet. They all have an active part in the internet. They all have some awareness of the internet. I'd say, if anything, they spend too much time on TikTok and YouTube. And so if you have a presence on there, you will get some of their attention.
Where would we, I mean, like, I've heard like Facebook is for old people like me, and you know, Instagram, and I'm just curious, should I, you know, start that presence? Is it TikTok, which I have to learn more about, or other like Instagram, X, or Blue Sky, I think is the other one now. So,
So I'd say that there's kind of two forms of social media. There's text-based ones and video-based ones. And the reason for that is you can make two different kinds of like content. Is your goal to make like a 1 minute video, or is your goal to make a good worded message with an image? And so it's like Instagram is definitely on like the text end, TikTok, YouTube Shorts are on the video end, Twitter is obviously on the text end. And so, my opinion, you should pick one of the two types and just be on all of them because you can just repost the same thing because you don't need to like learn all the like because like so many people that use TikTok will make a 1 minute, will put their TikToks on YouTube. I know some people who have used the same word for word, same tweets on Blue Sky, Twitter, Threads. And so I think just being on many of these platforms as possible and just trying to grab people, I think is the most bang for your buck.
so like on Twitter, I mean on what do you call it, TikTok, we would, if we wanted to announce like we're having a program coming up about ADA Jeopardy, and so we would just like to just go on TikTok and say, hey, by the way, we're having this program such and such day. Now, there's a Zoom link. Go to our Instagram to get the Zoom link to register, something like that, I guess.
Yeah, I mean,
Okay.
try to make it in a way that's like would be picked up by the algorithm, so something that would be fun for people who aren't just entirely interested in your events. So maybe
Okay.
start like, did you know that like disabled people have this kind of thing? Oh, if you agree about it, then this is where you go to do something about it. But that's sort of how yes, that's what I'd recommend. Is just those are the how I do it. Because realistically, like young people use so many different kinds of platforms, and organizers also use different platforms for people. Like Facebook is pretty common for particularly political organizers, but it's not very common for any other demographic of young people, I'd say. So I think it just depends on, I think just if your goal is just to get young people in your area, as many as you can is good.
Okay. Thank you so much, both of you,
This-
really.
Thank you. This is Avriana. I'm also gonna just flag that we're gonna be having one of our breakout sessions that Adam will be facilitating that can dive deeper into this conversation. But I'm gonna invite Zion to respond, and then we're gonna move to a 5-minute break before the breakout rooms.
Hi, this is Zion. I just wanted to say that in the South particularly, a lot of D9 organizations and a lot of churches are like the centers for the political sphere among the Black community. And that's how we reach older people. Like we talk to older people in the church, and you would be surprised at just how effective it is. Just around the school, there's like a few churches actually, and the organizations will like come down there in droves and register people. I don't think they go to door anymore, but I just wanted to say, yeah, that people do meet up, and colleges, especially HBCUs, are really linked up with their elders to get them engaged. So I hope that brings you a little bit of solace as to connecting the generations and getting them involved.
Miss Alexia, thank you so much, Zion and panelists, for the answers, and to our audience for the questions. I want to lift up just a few things in the chat. I'm seeing a lot of moms of young disabled people entering the chat, feeling excited. I'm seeing some great connections happening. Also seeing some reflection on some pieces that came up in the panel too, which is just the diversity in all of our communities, right? Like there might be different strategies that work for different communities. Um, for example, uh, our own staff shared in the chat that many Asian communities, even young Asian communities, do still actively use Facebook, and military and veteran communities do still actively use Facebook, whereas other young communities might be more on TikTok and Twitter. So I know that can be a frustrating answer too, and there are so many ways, but it's just a reminder that there's no one right way, and that different communities have different needs. And to Zion and Devonte's point, kind of re-emphasizing the importance within that of including leaders from different communities and prioritizing intersectionality when we're thinking about those strategies. So many things to continue discussing. We are going to take a quick break and come back 35 minutes after the hour. And then we will have 2 breakout rooms so that discussion can continue. So quick break, join at 35 after the hour, and breakouts.
This is Aubriana. Welcome back, everyone. Apologies, that break felt so short. But now we're really excited to continue this conversation around youth engagement and organizing in 2 separate breakout rooms. So you'll each have the option to choose which topic you would like to dive deeper into. Devonte and Adam will be facilitating these smaller group discussions. And now I'll explain the different breakout rooms that you can pick from. April, if you can throw up the slides when you can, that would be great. So breakout room 1 will be on engaging young disabled voters. The discussion questions will be, In the present, how can we engage young disabled voters, especially when they're underrepresented and or disengaged with politics? Also wondering if there's any examples of effective events or campaigns that you as Rev Up organizers have worked on that have centered around uplifting youth with disabilities. Our second breakout room will be around recruitment, training, and retainment of young disabled organizers. Discussion questions will be, what's one thing you wish more organizers knew about working with and including young people with disabilities? And the second question will be, how can we support intergenerational relationships throughout the Rev Up network and empower young disabled leaders within our coalitions? April, do you want to help us explain how folks can choose between the different breakout rooms? And if that's an access barrier, April can also help to manually move folks.
Hi, this is April. So for the breakout rooms, sorry, I had to move my headphones so I wasn't echoing. There will be two breakout rooms. It might pop up on your screen, but if it doesn't, at the bottom right of your Zoom window, there's a little square thing that says breakout rooms, and you can click on that. I haven't opened the rooms yet, so it won't pop up as an option right now. If you have trouble getting into a room for an access need, you can stay in here and I can manually move you, which will trigger a pop-up on your screen that you can click. We will also have one interpreter and one caption in each breakout, one captioner in each breakout room.
And a quick note, this is Aubriana around access. If you need to use the stream text links to view the captions when you're in the breakout room. So you won't be able to see it through Zoom, so you've got to click the stream text link to see the captions. And we'll be in the breakout rooms for approximately 10 minutes, and we'll be coming back to the main room at 50 after the hour for any reflecting thoughts or questions. And I just want to emphasize that we'll have to end our call today exactly at 3 p.m. Eastern time out of respect for our access providers. So if I cut you off, I'm super sorry, but we're going to respect that deadline. And then just to our facilitators, Devontae and Adam, please wait around a minute or two to make sure folks have enough time to join and that the access providers are in the breakout room before you start discussion. Wondering, Adam, if you wanted to finish responding to that last question.
Oh, I finished responding. I wanted to hear about what Yasmin was going to say.
Yes. So I'm here. So what I wanted to say was, in regards to what you had mentioned about employment, I definitely felt the same way. With this whole advocacy thing, I just, when I was looking for work, I just was like, I know there has to be some kind of job title for this. So I used to work at Independent Living Center as a systems advocate, and that seemed to be more of like the job title per se. When you're looking for work, like this kind of work falls under that job title. So I was, like I said, a systems advocate at a independent living center in Harlem. And what I did, I went up to Albany, participated in like legislative weekends and days like that. I assisted people with all type of disabilities. I'm someone who is visually impaired. I'm a visually impaired mom with a 18-year-old now who is registered to vote now. So I'm excited about that. And so there is, as far as I know, that's like kind of the only title that falls under this advocacy thing, where it kind of encompasses, all of the things that you mentioned that you do. I'm definitely familiar with the DMV area, and I did attend Howard University as well. And my first voting experience was actually like a bus trip that we took down south to get people registered to vote. So I'm kind of dating myself, but I know they probably don't do that anymore. But and that really opened my eyes up to a lot of, you know, situations outside of my own, seeing what it's like down south, and and how people lived, and that they might be a little hesitant to register because they didn't know much about what was happening.
Absolutely. This is Alexia. Thank you so much for sharing that. And we are almost at the top of the hour, so I'm going to close us out. I really want to thank everyone for joining today and giving us one of your most valuable gifts, your time and your wisdom and experience. I'm loving all of the intergenerational and cross-state connections we're seeing. I love the Howard University alum that are popping up here in the call. We'll have to tell KJ. I think he had to jump off early for his job. Thank you so much to Oliver, Adam, Devontae, KJ, and Zion for especially putting yourselves in the spotlight to share advice and experience. The chat was popping off, quoting you and thanking you for your wisdom. So I think that these discussions will really continue in the Rev Up network, and I'm especially continuing to marinate on these threads that have come up around what strategies work for what communities. How are we thinking about intersectionality in every aspect of the work, prioritizing it, and even how we define disability, and who we are including in the disability community, and all the nuances that might hold depending on what other identities you have as a person. And I also want to thank everyone for your patience in our breakout rooms. We had a couple of different accessibility issues happen. Zoom loves to just update and change its features every 2 weeks, and we never know. We never know what's going to happen. So thank you for your patience, and hoping we can create other spaces for folks to get to continue those conversations. We will share out the resources discussed today. The recording of the panel will be available in about 2 weeks. We'll email that out. And if you wanted to make a connection during the call today and you missed grabbing that email or name, email revup@aapd.com and we can get you to the right person. I'm really excited. I'm really grateful for all of you. Thank you, and see you soon.